Welcome. We are embarking on an exploration of what is, without a doubt, one of the most remarkable global phenomena of the 21st century, K-pop or Korean popular music.
It's a subject that really does demand a close look. What began as this explosive youth trend in South Korea has since morphed into a gigantic industrial and cultural force, and it's fundamentally reshaping how music is made and consumed all over the world.
That's precisely our mission today. We've gathered a significant body of source material that details K-pop's history, its hyper-refined industrial structure, and crucially, the very real human costs that exists behind that highly polished visual spectacle.
Right.
We're trying to look beyond the catchy melodies and the synchronized movements to understand the immense cultural, political, and economic engine that's driving it all.
And we really have to start with a clear understanding of the term itself, because the definition is, it's evolved right alongside the genre's popularity. K-pop emerged in the 1990s as a youth subculture, and it was heavily drawing from and hybridizing Western genres like dance, hip-hop, R&B, and even rock music.
And today, our sources make it clear that while it absolutely possesses melodic quality and musical content, K-pop chiefly refers to the musical output of teen idol acts, where success is just intrinsically linked to intense visual appeal and performance, often prioritizing that synchronized choreography as much as, if not more than, vocal skill.
The scale of this movement it's difficult to overstate. Just 5 years ago, in 2019, South Korea ranked 6th among the global music markets. And that massive jump in ranking it was indisputably fueled by the global breakthrough of groups like BTS and BLACKPINK.
And that momentum hasn't stopped. The sources show that by 2024, K-pop had transcended its regional designation. It became the leading global genre in unit sales, and that's encompassing both physical album sales and digital formats.
That is a huge shift.
It is. That shift from a regional curiosity to a leader in global unit sales shows a remarkable, almost industrialized dominance.
And just a quick note of context for you listening. Internationally, we use the term K-pop, which is really the South Korean equivalent of J-pop. It gained widespread use globally in the 2000s.
Right.
But domestically in South Korea, the music is often still simply referred to as gayo.
Gayo.
Yeah, which is just the general term for Korean pop music.
It's tempting to view K-pop as, a creation of the internet age, a purely modern phenomenon. But the roots of modern Korean popular music stretch back over a century, and they offer vital context for why the genre developed its distinctive structure.
Indeed. We can trace a starting point all the way back to 1885 with an American missionary named Henry Appenzeller. He didn't introduce pop music, of course, but he introduced the concept of changa.
Changa, and what was that exactly?
It was essentially the adaptation of Western melodies, so of British or American folk songs to Korean lyrics. It was a fusion of forms.
A prime example being how "Oh My Darling Clementine" was adapted into the Korean song Simkyonga.
Exactly. So this established a pattern right from the start, a pattern of adopting and hybridizing foreign sounds.
This practice continued, leading to the rise of trot in the mid-1920s.
Right. And trot blended 3 really distinct sounds. The structure of Japanese enka, traditional Korean musical elements, and then the rhythmic quality of American gospel music. It became the defining commercial sound for decades.
But the true cultural catalyst, the thing that really changed everything, came after the Korean War. The continuous presence of U.S. troops in South Korea fundamentally changed the cultural landscape. They acted as a conduit for Western music and entertainment.
And this exposure was multifaceted. You had American stars like Nat King Cole, Marilyn Monroe, and Louis Armstrong performing in USO shows for the troops, which exposed Korean musicians and the public to these very sophisticated Western performance styles.
And that cultural transfer was then formalized through the airwaves. In 1957, the American Forces Korea Network, Radio AFKN, began broadcasting.
And this wasn't just a curiosity. It fundamentally altered the musical DNA of Korean popular music. It moved it from the traditional pentatonic scale, with its 5-note structure,
Right.
toward heptachords, the 7-note scale of Western music. So Korean songs began being modeled directly after American rock and roll, country, and blues, which then gained widespread acceptance.
This post-war period generated some genuinely pioneering international stars. Our sources highlight the Kim sisters, who debuted in the late 1950s.
They were incredible. They moved to the United States, performing extensively in Las Vegas, and their television appearances, they're just staggering.
The number is 25 times on The Ed Sullivan Show.
25 times. I mean, for perspective, that's more appearances than American household names like Patti Page or even Louis Armstrong managed. They were a genuine phenomenon in the West.
Yet, as this cultural liberalization grew, so did the friction with the government. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, the rise of folk music and this emerging youth culture, which was heavily influenced by American hippie movements and the growing acceptance of Western rock, it was met with severe government repression and censorship.
The government, under President Park Chung-hee, viewed this imported youth culture as a political threat. Songs that were deemed too liberal or associated with anti-government movements were just banned outright.
And this crackdown wasn't subtle. American pop music and Korean rock were suppressed due to their perceived association with sex and drugs, and even some Schwartz songs were banned for having a Japanese style, despite the genre's deep roots in that colonial era.
To give you a sense of the political pressure, Shin Jong-hyun, who's often called the godfather of Korean rock, a highly respected figure.
The legend.
He was imprisoned in 1975 under the pretext of a marijuana scandal. This just demonstrated how aggressively the government was willing to control the cultural output to maintain social and political order.
All of this repression makes the revolutionary turning point that occurred in the 1990s even more significant. It was like a cultural dam breaking.
And the catalyst was Seo Taiji and Boys.
Their debut in 1992 is legendary. They appeared on an NBC talent show with their song, I Know, and it was this fusion of hip-hop, techno, and rock sound they dubbed rap dance.
And famously, the professional jury gave them the lowest rating possible. It just shows how completely out of step the industry establishment was with the emerging youth demographic.
But the public reaction was immediate, and it was overwhelming. I Know was a colossal hit, and its success modernized the entire Korean music landscape, well, almost overnight.
This group proved that a massive market existed for modern, fast-paced, technologically hybridized music that was targeted squarely at teenagers.
And as we know, where there's a massive market opportunity, industrial organization quickly follows. This is the moment the foundations of the modern K-pop machine were laid.
Within just 3 years, the original Big Three agencies were established. You have Lee Soo-man founding SM Entertainment in 1995, focusing on highly standardized production.
Then Young Hoon-suk, who was a former member of Seo Taiji and Boys, he founded YG in 1996, leaning more into that hip-hop aesthetic.
And finally, Park Jin-young established JYP in 1997 with a focus on cultivating artistic talent.
SM Entertainment really quickly solidified the template with the debut of HOT in 1996. This was the first generation of modern idols, and they defined the formula we recognize today. Rigorous, standardized training, upbeat, catchy melodies, highly energetic, synchronized choreography, and of course, extensive, coordinated merchandise.
Oh, absolutely. The promotions for their song Candy offer a perfect historical illustration of this new level of industrial control. The members had designated colors, they wore fuzzy mittens and props, and that coordinated youthful imagery was central.
It was a total package.
It was. This era marked a shift where the group's image and their coordinated performance were just as vital as the music itself. And that drove massive sales of everything from albums to candy and perfume associated with the brand.
Now, we have to layer in the crucial economic and political context here because this wasn't accidental. The 1997 Asian financial crisis hit South Korea hard.
Very hard.
But the government seized this moment not just for financial reform, but for a kind of cultural re-engineering.
Precisely. Rather than viewing culture as secondary, South Korea's leaders intentionally identified culture, specifically mass-produced, exportable popular culture, as the next major growth driver, comparable to their highly successful semiconductor or automobile industries.
And they didn't just pour millions in a general sense. The government strategically funneled funds into infrastructure and technology specifically designed to support the cultural industry.
Right. This included establishing a dedicated department within the Ministry of Culture, allocating specific funds for content creation, and heavily subsidizing technology development related to digital content platforms. This intentional, government-driven soft power strategy is absolutely fundamental to the genre's global success today. They built the infrastructure to support mass production and distribution on an international scale.
Building on that strategic foundation, we arrive at the defining characteristics of modern K-pop. This unified audiovisual package, which acts as its primary export product.
It truly is an integrated art form. Our sources describe K-pop as an all-encompassing genre exhibiting a wide spectrum of musical and visual elements.
A particularly concise definition came from the French Institut National de l'Audiovisuel, which defined it as a fusion of synthesized music, sharp dance routines, and fashionable, colorful outfits.
And that visual presentation is not arbitrary at all. It is the core marketing strategy. Every group, for their debut and for every subsequent release, uses a distinct concept. The concept, yeah, it's a visual and musical theme that dictates everything from hair color to fashion to the entire mood of the music video.
And those subsequent releases are known distinctively as comebacks. What's critical here, and something you should know, is that this term does not mean the group experienced a setback or took a hiatus, which is how we'd use it in English.
Not at all. In K-pop, a comeback is simply the structured, highly anticipated launch of a new single or a new mini-album.
And that promotional cycle is just relentless. It starts with months of teasers and trailers, often meticulously shot on film-quality cameras, uploaded to YouTube to build up global anticipation.
Then the release is followed by a debut showcase or a press event, and then weeks and weeks of promotional appearances across multiple music programs.
At the very heart of this aesthetic is the centrality of dance. In K-pop, the choreography is not supplementary. It is an integral, non-negotiable component of the artistry.
And this requires incredible technical precision. I mean, when you have multiple idols performing, they have to continually switch positions while singing and dancing in perfect synchrony.
That's the formation changing.
Exactly. This dynamic shifting of the group's shape is a key visual component known as formation changing, or jurabakam. It turns the entire group into a single kinetic unit.
And let's highlight the importance of the point dance or pointe en mu.
Yes, these are the highly repetitive, hooking key movements that are designed to match the characteristics or the title of the song's lyrics.
So you think about the instantly recognizable synchronized hand gestures of Super Junior's sorry.
Or the hip sway of Brown Eyed Girl's Abracadabra. They are viral-ready moves designed for maximum public replicability.
And this necessity creates a really fascinating paradox for the choreographers, doesn't it? The routine has to be technically challenging enough to be impressive, it has to be complementary to the music structure, and highly flattering to the physical appearance of the performers.
Yet at the same time, it also needs to be simplified enough for the millions of fans worldwide to learn and replicate. And that's a core component of the fandom culture.
How does that even work?
Well, choreographers often submit their routines as video recordings, and the final routine is heavily refined with input from both the company executives and the artists themselves. The choreographer, Mei J. Lee, explains that her routines often start by simply trying to express the feeling or meaning of the lyrics through small, repeated movements that are then built into the full, complex dance sequence.
Moving from the visual to the audio, the music itself is characterized by constant hybridization, particularly a strong reliance on American-style hip-hop. Artists like Yoonmi Ray and Tiger JK were absolutely crucial in popularizing this sound in the Korean market.
Linguistically, you see a very calculated strategy of incorporating English phrases into both the titles and the lyrics.
Right.
Our sources suggest this trend is heavily driven by Korean Americans or Koreans who have studied in the U.S., leveraging their English fluency. It's a calculated step toward global expansion, sort of softening the linguistic barrier for wider audiences around the world.
And we have hard data reflecting this push.
We do. In 1995, only 8% of song titles in the top 50 charts used English. That figure fluctuated, but by 2010, it had dramatically jumped to 44%.
Wow.
And this push for international reach also manifests in how groups name themselves. Many use English Roman alphabet names like IU, Sistar, and Beast, instead of traditional transliterated Hangul names.
This linguistic and musical hybridization, though, it presents a distinct market challenge, especially in North America. Some critics argue that K-pop struggles to gain full acceptance in the U.S. precisely because it can be seen as a highly distilled, hyper-produced, yet sometimes derivative version of existing Western music.
That view stems from the North American market's historical emphasis on valuing what they call authenticity and individual expression qualities that this standardized manufactured idol system can, be seen as suppressing.
So they're questioning if it's innovative or just a supremely well-packaged imitation?
Essentially, yes.
If the sound is hybrid, the fashion is pure theatrical performance. Seo Taiji and Boys in 1992 introduced that hip-hop aesthetic, oversized t-shirts, windbreakers, do-rags, which was carried on by groups like Do and DJ DOC.
But the manufactured idol groups quickly standardized the aesthetic into coordinated costumes. Again, HOT's candy promotions are the classic example. Designated colors for each member, fuzzy accessories, and coordinated outfits used to accentuate the choreography.
There was an interesting gender distinction in the early days, though. While male groups like HOT maintained a degree of individuality in their accessories, 1990s female idol groups like SES and FinKL often wore nearly homogeneous, identical costumes.
And those costumes explicitly promoted an innocent, useful image, often involving white outfits, large bows, or schoolgirl aesthetics.
As the genre matured, the styles diversified rapidly, basically adopting every global trend simultaneously. Our sources categorize modern looks into street, which uses bright colors and graphic prints.
Then there's retro, drawing heavily on 1960s to 1980s nostalgia with denim and wide pants. Sexy, which incorporates revealing outfits of satin, lace, leather, and high heels.
You also have black and white for a more chic, formal look, and futurism, which is characterized by metallic details and popping colors for electronic or hip-hop genres.
But regardless of the trend, there is an inescapable constant: the intense pressure on physical appearance.
Right.
Professor Inkyo observed that K-pop fundamentally emphasizes thin, tall, and feminine looks with adolescent or sometimes very cute facial expressions. And this requirement applies universally, regardless of whether the singer is male or female.
It's an essential part of the marketed package of perfection.
We shift now to the structure that facilitates this global, visually driven product, the K-pop industry itself. And it's not merely a collection of record labels. It's a massive, vertically integrated ecosystem.
It encompasses everything: the core production houses, talent management, event production, distribution channels, and that massive merchandise pipeline. This centralized control is what gives the industry its immense efficiency.
And the financial scale really reflects this centralized efficiency. In just the first half of 2012, the Korean music industry grossed nearly $3.4 billion, which was a staggering 27.8% increase from the year before.
And by 2017, the industry revenue was estimated at $5 billion. This is a formidable economic force.
The power structure is dominated by the Big Four: SM, YG, JYP, and HYBE, which is the parent company of Big Hit Entertainment. They function as these powerful representative agencies, managing the entire life cycle of an artist, from recruiting and financing to the intense training, marketing, and managing all public and musical activities.
And this brings us to the famous, or perhaps notorious, trainee system model, which is the heart of this entire engine. It was famously formalized by SM founder Lee Soo-min, who termed his conceptual framework cultural technology.
Let's unpack that term.
Go.
Cultural technology is not about software or gadgets in the traditional sense. It's a systemic, almost algorithmic approach designed to codify the entire process of producing culture into a form of technology.
So Lee Soo-min essentially created a manual for manufacturing success.
Exactly. It's a formalized, standardized production process aimed at minimizing risk and maximizing global market appeal by standardizing everything: the selection process, the training regimen, the concept execution, and even the required choreography submission process.
The process begins with intense, highly competitive auditions or scouting, sometimes resulting in binding contracts offered to potential artists at extremely young ages. Once they're recruited, these hopefuls become trainees.
And these trainees are often housed together in dormitories in a highly regulated environment, and they adhere to a very strict schedule. They spend hours and hours a day in mandatory classes covering core skills like singing, dancing, and rapping.
But crucially, they also receive intensive foreign language instruction: Mandarin, Japanese, and English, all in preparation for a global debut.
This training period can last anywhere from 1 year up to 6 years, and there really is no upper or lower age limit for starting.
And the financial commitment required from the agencies to maintain this system must be immense.
It is. Our sources estimated that as of 2012, the average cost of training just one single idol under SM Entertainment was approximately $3 million US.
$3 million for one person.
For one person. And despite that significant investment, the risk remains staggering. There is absolutely no guarantee a trainee will ever actually debut. They're often dropped from the program if they fail to meet expectations, or if the company decides they simply don't fit the current market concept.
The dedication required from those who do succeed is profound. I mean, look at the example of Rosé from BLACKPINK. She dropped out of high school at 16 in Melbourne to move to South Korea and trained for 4 years before she finally secured her spot in the group and debuted.
It's an enormous personal sacrifice, and it's all predicated on a very uncertain outcome.
For those who do debut, success is measured meticulously through specific chart metrics compiled by platforms like iChart across South Korea's major streaming services, including Melon, Spotify, and Bugs.
We should probably clarify the hierarchy of achievement because these terms are critical markers of success in the industry.
Okay, let's break it down.
First, you have an all-kill. That means the song has reached the #1 spot simultaneously on all of South Korea's major music platforms' real-time charts.
Second, achieving a certified all-kill raises the bar. It requires the song to rank #1 simultaneously on all real-time and daily charts.
And finally, the ultimate and highest achievement is the perfect all-kill. This requires the song to rank #1 simultaneously on the real-time, the daily, and the weekly charts. It's the gold standard for commercial dominance within the domestic market.
However, the sources force us to acknowledge that these metrics, despite their importance, are sometimes undermined by the issue of sajargi.
Ah, yes, sajagi. It's the Korean term for chart manipulation, and it really calls the credibility of the charts into question. It encompasses a range of activities, from the bulk purchasing of physical albums, sometimes to the detriment of smaller groups, to the use of digital stream farms and bots designed to boost play counts.
And this practice, particularly the digital manipulation, creates a complex, ethical, and competitive gray area.
It does. It leads to constant conflict, especially between domestic and international streaming counts, and it raises doubts among fans and competitors about whether a song's success is organic or if it's manufactured through financial or technological means.
What's truly revolutionary now is that the model itself is being exported.
Absolutely. JYP Entertainment explicitly stated they learned the concept of intensive artist development from Motown founder Berry Gordy Jr., but they noted that while the U.S. stopped using such an intense system, Korea refined and perfected it.
And now they are globalizing that highly refined system. JYP is applying it to foreign talent, creating groups like VCHA with American and non-Korean talent specifically trained under the K-pop system in the United States.
And similarly, HYBE's partnership with Geffen Records produced Cat's Eye, which is a multiracial English-language girl group specifically modeled on K-pop principles. The goal, as they publicly stated, is to take the K out of K-pop by building a global talent pipeline that uses these highly efficient codified training methods regardless of the artist's origin.
The reality show debut. Dream Academy showcased this entire intense process to the world. One of the debuting members, Sophia La Forteza, described the experience as containing so much tension, so much uncertainty, and so much competition and pressure.
And that quote provides a vital bridge, illustrating the immense psychological environment required to achieve this new level of globalized perfection.
And the future of this cultural technology seems to be fully digital. SM Entertainment launched the SM Culture Universe and debuted the first metaverse girl group, ISPA, where real-life members have virtual counterparts.
Right, and Lee Soo-min has been a vocal proponent of this, arguing that the integration of the metaverse and AI is the ultimate horizon for the industry.
We're already seeing proof of concept with groups like Plave, an all-virtual boy group that is achieving significant success on real-world charts.
In essence, AI and virtual idols represent the ultimate evolution of cultural technology, a way to maintain the concept of perfection while minimizing the human risk factors inherent in dealing with actual people.
We've established how ruthless and efficient this industrial engine is, capable of achieving a perfect all-kill and exporting its model globally. But to achieve that level of systematic perfection and control, the sources compel us to look at the immense physical and psychological price the individuals inside that engine room must pay.
This industrial efficiency comes with a very serious documented human cost, beginning with the structure of the employment contracts themselves. We have to confront the history of what have been dubbed slave contracts.
These contracts came under heavy scrutiny due to allegations of severe overwork, highly restrictive terms, and financial arrangements that heavily favored the management over the artist, often leaving the idols in debt for their training costs for years after their debut.
A landmark legal case that really shifted the industry was the 2009 lawsuit filed by members of TVXQ against SM Entertainment. The idols alleged that their strenuous working conditions had led to adverse health effects. The court ruling ultimately determined the contract to be void, which sent absolute shockwaves through the industry.
That ruling prompted the government to step in. The Fair Trade Commission subsequently released regulated contract templates to try and standardize terms and reduce exploitation.
And subsequent regulatory efforts were specifically aimed at protecting the youngest members of the system. In 2014, South Korea passed a law that specifically protected idols under the age of 19 from unhealthy labor practices and overtly sexualized performances.
And crucially, this law attempted to guarantee them the basic rights to learn, rest, and sleep.
Yes, and noncompliance carried the risk of a significant fine, equivalent to about $10,000.
However, agency executives offered a defense of the long contract periods and the restrictive terms. They argued that the high expenses incurred during that long training period, covering housing, facilities, equipment, lessons, costumes, everything.
For $3 million per trainee.
Exactly. They argue that must be amortized over a long term.
They also raise a concern that trainees might move undercover between agencies to receive training without any commitment, essentially receiving a free education only to jump ship before they debut. This really highlights the industry's focus on protecting its investment above all else.
Beyond the contracts, management exerts this incredibly strict, pervasive control over the public image and identity of their groups. A cultural theory lecturer noted that stars are often explicitly restricted from dating publicly or having any significant control of their own lives.
The pressure to maintain this pristine, sanitized, and often adolescent image is intense. One professor pointed out that K-pop stars should expect to lose at least half their fandom if they make any controversial statements, political or otherwise.
And this tight grip on public narrative is often why groups feel safer being more outspoken on sensitive social issues abroad than they are domestically in South Korea.
Absolutely. This absolute fixation on image inevitably drives the persistent and controversial lookism debate. Given the industry's universal emphasis on thin, tall, and hyper-feminine looks, concerns have consistently been raised about the industry narrowing beauty standards and contributing to the promotion of excessive dieting or cosmetic surgery.
And in 2019, the South Korean Ministry of Gender Equality and Family actually intervened, releasing non-mandatory guidelines aimed at curbing this pressure.
That's right. One specific recommendation was to limit the number of skinny, look-alike idols appearing on television together, arguing explicitly that their nearly identical appearances would narrow the standards of beauty for young Koreans.
Shifting to the artistic output itself, there's criticism that the music, due to the formulaic nature of cultural technology, can sometimes be perceived as unoriginal. Groups are occasionally accused of outright plagiarism of Western music.
And critics have sometimes described the heavy reliance on integrated English phrases in the lyrics as occasionally meaningless filler, serving only marketability.
We must also acknowledge the frequent and serious criticisms of cultural appropriation. This is most often directed at the utilization of elements from African American culture, citing instances of idols adopting cornrows, bandanas, or other hip-hop stylistic tropes in their styling.
And there are historical instances of blackface and the use of racial slurs that have drawn significant justified criticism internationally.
And it's not just that. K-pop groups have also faced accusations related to the appropriation of other cultures, including Native American and Indian cultural elements used in music video concepts or performance outfits.
It is important, as we analyze this, to present the nuance. There is an ongoing and complex debate about whether the borrowing of cultural elements, when separated from their original context of struggle or community, automatically constitutes negative cultural appropriation, or whether it's simply a byproduct of the hybridizing nature of pop music. But the criticism persists as a crucial part of the global conversation around the genre.
But perhaps the most serious topic, and one that requires us to slow our pace and acknowledge the gravity, is the mental health crisis within this industry. It's a direct consequence of the intense uncertainty and impossible pressures inherent in the job.
The emotional toll is intense and is widely documented in the sources. The musician Park Kyung of the group Block B noted that many artists debut at a very young age with no sense of self yet. And when they realize that every single word, action, and public move is meticulously observed and judged, they become extremely cautious and, in his words, they lose their freedom.
We have other powerful testimonies illustrating this internal struggle. Suga of BTS spoke openly about his own mental health challenges, reflecting that anxiety and loneliness seem to be with me for life. To agonize every moment is what life is.
This constant internal pressure to maintain an illusion of effortlessness while operating under extreme scrutiny is clearly debilitating.
And this relentless systemic pressure, the debt, the surveillance, the lack of personal freedom has sadly contributed to a tragic and recurring pattern among prominent artists.
Yes. We look back at the suicide of Seo Ji-won in 1996, the devastating loss of Kim Jong-un in 2017, and then the subsequent deaths of Sully in 2019, and her close friend Gu Hara just 1 month later. And more recently, the industry experienced the loss of Moonbin in 2023. We extend our profound sympathy for the victims of these unbearable pressures.
These losses renewed intense scrutiny on the competitive and often exploitative show business environment. The expectation of perfection, which is already intense in Korean society, is amplified exponentially within the K-pop system.
The case of Sully perfectly illustrates the impossible expectations. She faced immense online abuse after simply entering a dating relationship because idols are often expected by fans and management to abstain from any personal relationships for years. They are sometimes viewed as belonging to the public.
And this highlights the extreme level of surveillance that is maintained over these individuals. One designer working with idols noted that receiving specific threats and angry mail is often considered a normal occupational hazard.
So the expectation is not just to perform, but to live a manufactured life of perpetual, accessible perfection.
Moving from the intense internal pressures, we return to the massive global impact of K-pop, driven largely by the Korean government's strategic use of this culture as diplomacy or soft power.
The success of the Hallyu, or the Korean wave, is not accidental at all. The sources reiterate the government's crucial role. They acknowledge the massive economic benefits of cultural exports, recognizing that culture acted as a vital economic multiplier.
And one estimate suggested that for every $100 increase in the export of cultural products, it resulted in a $412 increase in exports of other Korean consumer goods, like food, clothing, and IT products.
So culture was, and it remains, a highly profitable marketing tool for the entire nation.
To maximize this effect, the government actively subsidized cultural endeavors, including the worldwide establishment of Korean cultural centers. This soft power is deployed politically in fascinating and direct ways.
For instance, the genre has been used in actual psychological warfare against North Korea. In 2010, South Korea responded to the alleged sinking of a Navy ship by broadcasting 4-minute single "huh" across the demilitarized zone.
I remember that. The Ministry of National Defense even considered setting up large TV screens to broadcast music videos by popular girl groups across the border.
Conversely, K-pop has also served as a diplomatic bridge. In 2018, South Korean artists, including the girl group Red Velvet and the veteran singer Cho Young-pil, performed in Pyongyang for an audience that included Kim Jong-un. This demonstrates the genre's utility as an officially sanctioned tool of political outreach.
The genre has achieved significant global political recognition. Back in 2012, U.S. President Barack Obama acknowledged the Korean wave, humorously noting that his daughters had even taught him the Gangnam-style dance.
And UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon also cited the great global success of Korean culture, confirming its undisputed mark on the world stage.
To wrap up our contextual understanding, let's just clarify a few remaining key expressions for those engaging with this world.
Sure. As we've discussed, the artists themselves are primarily referred to as idols or idol groups, emphasizing their manufactured, almost worshipped status. Within a group, the youngest member holds the important position known as the maknae.
And when looking at achievements, the award structure is highly formalized. Artists first receive a bonsang for outstanding musical achievement.
Then, one of the bonsang winners is elevated to receive the dasang, which is the grand prize, marking the highest level of industry recognition.
And finally, regarding releases, the primary heavily promoted song of an album is called the title track, which is roughly equivalent to a lead single in the West.
And anything shorter than a full-length album, typically containing 4 to 6 tracks, is consistently referred to as a mini-album, which is essentially an extended play or EP.
This extensive material presents a profound dichotomy that we hope you consider further. K-pop is globally dominant, recognized for its high-quality production, intense artistic discipline, and its immense cultural influence.
Yet, this success is inextricably linked to a highly centralized, ruthlessly commercial, and intensely scrutinized system, a system that places extreme psychological, physical, and financial burdens on the individual artists within it.
For you, the listener, the fundamental question to continue exploring is the inherent tension between such a thoroughly industrialized, successful model of cultural production and the unavoidable mental and personal cost borne by the young people who strive to maintain that impossible standard of global perfection.
That tension remains the deepest layer of this phenomenon.
Indeed. Thank you for exploring this fascinating and complex material with us.
My pleasure.
And to you, our listener, thanks for listening.